Hey, what's going on here? Upon opening the business data, David, the director, exclaimed in surprise. This is a business meeting with a foreign company, so it's natural that the documents are in a foreign language, isn't it? A woman coldly responded to him. She was Mary, who had been working on this business deal with me, someone who had been unfairly fired by David. Yeah, I get that, but this is... David scrutinized the data intently. I can't read this. David was staring intently at the computer screen, sweat beading on his forehead. By firing me, he had inadvertently put himself in a difficult position. My name is John. I started working for a food import company after graduating university, and now I'm a 28-year-old office worker. My job is busy but very fulfilling and enjoyable. Because of this, I often find myself thinking about work even outside of work, and I don't show much interest in other things. As a result, I'm still single. There's a woman in my company named Mary who graduated from the same university and faculty as me. She's my colleague, and we've tackled numerous projects together, sharing both successes and failures, like comrades in arms. Sometimes we have conflict of opinions, and at other times we praise each other. In that process, we became good friends and could talk about anything. Eventually, we became friends who could stop by a bar after work, grab some beer, and chat comfortably while slightly intoxicated. Hey John, don't you think it's about time for you to see somebody? I don't think I need them yet. Are you sure? You could easily get a girlfriend. Then how about you, Mary? Aren't you going to find any boyfriend? I think I'm good for now too. I feel the same way as you do. Our conversations were mostly about work, but we also asked about each other's private lives and decided where to go out together. Being with her felt more like being with a friend of the same gender, so I felt very comfortable around her. When the order numbers increased and it got busier, a man about 5 or 6 years older than me joined our department as the director. His name was David. He was given the director position right away because he had worked for a major company before. To us, who knew nothing about him, he was nothing but a source of anxiety. I'm David, the new director. Well, I used to work for a much bigger company, so I expect I'm more capable than you guys. Nice to meet you. That was his first greeting. A month was about to pass since David became the director. At first, everyone had high hopes because he came from a big company. But his personality was terrible. Hey John, I told you to organize the order list. How's it going? I've just finished, so I'll bring it over to you. You're slow. Can't you even manage this much task quickly? I'm sorry. Hurry up and bring it here. This is our typical conversations as usual. He would push his work onto me and then complain. But he is still preferential to subordinates whom he likes. Especially the young women. I'm sorry that I'm late to bring this for you. Don't worry, it happens to everyone. Thank you so much. They were confused about how to react to David as well. It seemed they've decided to behave amiably for the time being, but most people found he is a creepy. Even when male employees treated David in a similar manner, they often got scolded, which only made the women dislike him more. Eventually, his blatant attitude led the department's employees to regard him with cold stares. When Mary and I went to the bar, we would often end up complaining about David. I really hate that guy. Yeah, his attitude towards women is so obvious. He keeps following me around, even during breaks and after work. And today, he was like, "Do you have a boyfriend? It's so clear what he's after me. That sounds tough. Here, let me treat you today to cheer you up." Really, yay. Though venting about David helped us feel a bit better, the constant stress started to wear on us. His behavior towards Mary was particularly blatant. Hey Mary, how about we go out for dinner sometime? Sorry, I have a plan to do on that day. What's plan? That's personal. Come on, you can tell me. Whenever David talked to Mary about non-work related things, he would almost always try to touch her shoulder or make physical contact in some way. He even made gestures as if he was going to pat her on the head. Mary would avert her eyes from David, her face filled with disgust. "David, here are the documents you asked for. They're all sorted." You're bringing them now. Sorry. Try to read the room next time. You see I'm talking to someone, don't you? Can't you even show that much consideration? Sorry. If he tried to go too far, I'd find some reason to stop David's hand or interrupt the conversation, but he didn't seem to appreciate that, and his attitude towards me got worse by the day. "Hey John, take care of the trash and cleaning in the morning." "Sorry, I have to go on a sales call now. Maybe someone else can." "Shut up and just do it." "But I really don't have the time." "Seriously, you are so useless. You should have planned to leave earlier. It's your fault." "Understood." He would sometimes lounge around while everyone else was busy working. "John, bring me a coffee." "Sorry, I'm actually middle of something." "What?" "Hurry up and don't make excuses." "But I sorry." "Understood." If I talked back, he would just nag more. Lately, I've learned to just apologize and get through it. And make some for Mary too. Yes. At that moment, Mary was shaking her head slightly from side to side. Her reaction was so funny that I couldn't help but laugh. "What's so funny?" "Get on with it. I'm sorry." Also, when we were about to finish work and go out for drinks as usual, he would dump a load of work on me that couldn't be finished without staying late. "Hey John, tidy up this data for tomorrow's meeting and prepare the documents and make copies for everyone too." "I'm sorry, but I've already done for today." "You can still work after you've done. Get on with it." "Okay, but isn't this data only halfway done?" "Yeah, so." "No, it's nothing." "That's good. I'm going home then." "Have a good night, sir." David left the office with refreshing confidence. "Are you okay, John?" As I stood there, frozen, Mary asked me gently. "I'm fine, Mary. Sorry, it looks like I can't go out with you today." "Don't worry about it. Do you need help with anything?" "Thanks, but you must be stressed out enough because of him." "I'll be fine, so you go ahead." "I'm okay. Well, sometimes I prefer to be alone at times like this." "I see. Then, I'll go. Call me if you need anything." "Thank you." Due to David's seemingly harassing behavior, the chances for Mary and me to go out for drinks significantly decreased. Because of that, our stress that we used to be able to vent has been accumulating. Honestly, I can't stand with this anymore. I felt a flame of anger burning inside me when I'm alone in the office. Mary and I had finally clinched a deal for wine trading with a client we had built a trust relationship with since we joined the company. The deal was worth an astonishing $10 million. It took some time because the client is a foreign company. However, it was one of the biggest deals in our company, and CEO Johnson was very pleased. Mary and I were called to the CEO's office separately. "You've done really well, John. You are our company's pride." "Thank you very much." "How about this? It's not exactly a party, but there's a dinner coming up with some CEOs. Would you like to join as my assistant?" "Well, I'm honored, but is it okay for a regular employee like me to attend?" "What are you talking about? Your skills are undoubtedly genuine. Besides, my acquaintances are interested in who managed to close this deal." "Is that so? Then, I'd be glad to accept your kind offer." "Good. With your skills, you might own your own company someday. It would be good to make connections with CEOs for that time." "Thank you very much." It was such a valuable opportunity. Mary was told something similar when she was called in later, but she declined the invitation to the dinner. When I asked why, she laughed and said, "These kind of gatherings make me feel suffocated." Back in the office, my colleagues were waiting for me at the entrance. They celebrated with crackers and congratulated us. Congrats, John and Mary. Congratulations. I'm happy for you guys. As members of the same department, we're proud of you. For a while, the office was like a party. Mary was genuinely happy and smiling among them, but due to a lingering sense of caution, I couldn't fully share in the joy. In the midst of the celebration, I noticed the absence of our department head, David. Hut, don't get cocky. As soon as his presence crossed my mind, I heard that words. Looking around the office, I found David in a corner. He was glaring at me with a smirk that was eerily unsettling. Seeing him like that, I couldn't purely enjoy the moment anymore. The next day, as expected, I was summoned to the meeting room by David. Seems like you've been living the high life lately. What do you mean? Are you playing dumb? Don't get cocky just because you achieved something decent. Did you expect someone like me, who has worked for major companies, to congratulate someone like you? He seems like he got a chip on his shoulder. He spoke to me with an atmosphere of blatant hostility. I couldn't help but furrow my brows at every word David said. Well, let's get to the issue. I hear you've been harassing Mary lately. I wanted to retort that he was the one harassing, but I suppressed that feeling and responded. That's not true. Did someone tell you that? I can say who did, and I don't need to show the evidence, because I've seen it myself. Is that so? As time passed in this discussion, or rather, this one-sided blame game, David's smirk grew wider. Deliberately closing the distance, touching her body despite her dislike. This is not good, is it? David shows the creepy smirk that people who mistakenly think they have the upper hand often show. I don't need someone who did like this in my department, so you're fired. Okay, actually, I expected it would happen someday. And even though it was a very rewarding job, I began to feel my body getting heavier and heavier day by day on my way to work because of him. I had thought about quitting someday, so I took this as an opportunity and accepted his words smoothly. Now you gotta worried about yourself. Oh, what a pity. Well, I have other things I want to do besides being office worker, so don't worry about me. Okay, then I leave because I'm already fired. Stop being tough. I'll at least lend you some money if you really beg me like down your knees. Excuse me. I didn't want to hear any more from him and tried to leave the room. That's when he cheerfully said, "Oh, right, that $10 million deal you and Mary worked on, I'll take that. Don't worry about the details. I'll ask her." No need to worry at all. Hearing this, I sneered at David and left the room. Not long after I left, I heard from Mary about what happened after. The day after I left, David was blatantly in a good mood. He started to bother her more than before, and Mary stressed out more than before. Don't worry, Mary. Even without a handover from John, I can understand the detail of the negotiation just by looking at it. Okay. He tried to show his abilities and impress her, but she was really worried. Because, hey, what's this all about? Opening the negotiation data, David, the department head, exclaimed in surprise. The client is a foreign company, so it's natural for it to be in a foreign language. Yeah, I knew that, but this is... David stared intently at the data. I can't read it. Sweating profusely, David started to freaking out. Mary looked at him with disdain and sighed deeply. What language is this? It's French. What? Mary's mood became worse and worse, and the words she spoke to him became colder and colder. Mary, do you speak French? Well, yes. But if you hadn't fired John, this deal would have probably gone smoothly, and the negotiation might be called off. What should I do? Are you really sure who you asking? David had no words in response and fell silent. Mary's anger only grew, reaching a breaking point. That's enough, David. Please realize that your usual attitude is ruining the atmosphere in this department. And you fired John because you thought he was harassing me. How do you know that? John and I are friends. Just friends. He treats me not as a woman, but as if I were just one of the guys. There's no way he would act in the vile manner you do towards me." Mary's rare outburst of anger left the office in a chilling silence. I heard from a colleague later that David, unaccustomed to serious reprimands, visibly shrank, an unusual sight for an adult, tears welling up in his eyes. "Your persistent inquiries about whether I have a partner, trying to leave work at the same time as me, and even attempting to follow me to the station I use. Honestly, it was very unpleasant. I can't take it anymore. I will be reporting your actions to the grievance office." "Please, don't do that." Mary shook off David's desperate attempt to stop her and left the office. According to a colleague who observed him afterwards, he was trembling and repeatedly muttering, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" Later, David was called to the grievance office where he was severely reprimanded. He was seen half crying, trying to justify his actions towards Mary, which he happened to overhear by chance. "I met her when I was a trainee teacher at a high school. I fell in love with her at first sight, and I've been following her ever since. I searched and finally found out she was working at this company. I joined a company because of that. It's true. I fired an employee who got along well with her for personal reasons. I couldn't stand his presence. I wanted to prove that I was the only one who could offer her pure love." Even the grievance officer was taken aback by his confession, which seemed to come from the depths of the earth. Hearing this, Mary collapsed to her knees, trembling. Afterward, David was demoted from his managerial position to a regular employee. Due to the personal issues behind his motivation for joining the company, he was transferred to a different department on another floor where Mary wasn't present. The impact of this has led him to financial difficulties. Well, considering his self-serving nature, it's hard to imagine he was ever prudent with his money. This is surely what he deserved. And now he's away from Mary, and everybody in the office knows what he've done. He will surely have a mental breakdown in the years to come. My ability to speak French comes from my father's influence. I spent my childhood in France until the age of 15 because of my father's job. My interest in French literature, which I developed during that time, led me to major in it at university. Thanks to those efforts, and with Mary's hard work, we were able to close that $10 million wine deal. I thought it would be a shame to let that experience deteriorate into a thing of the past, so I decided to start a new business based on my fluent French and the knowledge and experience I had gained at the food import company. Its content is French literature with a taste. Just like American literature, the world within books is filled with various gourmet dishes. Jack and the Beanstalk, The Glass Dog, and in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, there's many kinds of meal in that story. Also, I want to import sweets and foods inspired by stories from French literature like The Little Prince, Les Miserables, and Around the World in 80 Days, to be enjoyed alongside reading. This feeling was one of the original reasons why I started a company that mainly imports food products associated with literature and literary figures. 1 month has passed since I took this step. Although it is now starting to take off, it was still a struggle in the beginning. This is a real thorny issue, especially when it comes to funding. Even with all the hard work, there was never enough money. For this reason, I had to ask the bank to provide them with some money somehow. I could have relied on connections made for CEO Johnson from my time at the food import company, but I doubted that other CEOs, whom I had only met briefly, would be interested in this not yet profitable venture. So, I decided to wait until the company was more established and could entice them with the scent of potential profits before leveraging those connections. For now, I want to keep it on track, making the most of the small connections I've made. Several months later, I received a call from Mary. "John, it's been a while. How are you doing?" "I'm doing well, just keeping things going here. How about you, Mary?" "I'm doing great, especially now that David is gone. I feel so refreshed. That's great to hear. Thank you. And about that $10 million deal, it was successfully completed. Congratulations. That's impressive, especially with the sudden tough situations. Well done. Thank you. So, well, why don't we grab some drinks to celebrate? It has been a while. I've been waiting for your words. I actually have things I want to talk to you. Let's talk about it when we meet. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. The call ended there, but somehow, I felt something indescribable. Even though it was the same type of conversation we always have, hearing her voice after such a long time left me feeling emotions I couldn't quite understand. On the day, we raised our glasses at a somewhat upscale pub we don't usually visit. It's so good. I knew that drinking together is really nice, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. What's up? You seem a bit off today. It's nothing. Well, maybe I'm a bit different today. Are you saying this yourself? Well, it's fine. Let's order something. Sounds good. As the dishes and cold beer arrived one by one, we caught up on recent times. I talked about the hardships of starting my company, and Mary talked about David, who is not in close relationship anymore. Actually, I have a favor, John. I want to work at your company. You're just after settling that big deal. Is it because of David? Yeah. Today, Mary drank more than usual. She ended up quite drunk, almost to the point of being defenseless. I've been feeling so uneasy. The creepiness from that time still lingers in my chest. Sure, work is going well, but I've started to dislike being there. I remember the story, being stalked by someone as clingy as him. It's understandable you'd feel that way. That's why I've decided I want to work at your place, John, and then I want to move out of my current house and live near you. Whoa, hold on. This is all moving a bit fast. Mary is usually differ, but today she seemed particularly vulnerable. Seeing her like this made me unsure of what to do at times. Is it uncomfortable for you if I live nearby? No, that's not a problem for me, but what should I do? I'm getting drunk now and my thinking is not as clear. And then I blurted out, instead of living nearby, why don't you just move in my place? What? Even she was drunk. Mary's response was sharp. I'd be really happy if you worked at my company. I really want you to come, and honestly, I'd feel uneasy leaving you alone. I was thinking it might be good if we lived together, if you're okay with that. Well, we're friends, and that's a big step. I need some time to prepare myself. Is it because of alcohol? Or is it the emotions I'm hoping for? Either way, her face was flushed red at that moment. Well, if you do decide to come, I'll be counting on you. Let's continue working together as business partners. Okay, then, let's toast to our new beginning. 4 years have passed since I founded the company. Recently, our products themed around French literature and gourmet have started to be featured by young people on social media. Among them were celebrities and influencers, whose endorsements turned our products into a big hit. Now, riding the wave of trend, we've also started British literature and gourmet and German literature and gourmet divisions within the company. We started as a small team has grown, as more people who share the same passion for other countries have joined, expanding our scale. We're now able to plan large events, and my company's revenue has been hitting new records year after year. I'm thinking it's about time to approach the various CEOs I met through the opportunities I had while working at the food import company with some big proposals. Since the day Mary joined my company, we've been living together. About a week after she moved in, I joked, "This is more like living together," and she became unusually flustered and embarrassed. Seeing Mary's genuinely adorable reaction, I finally understood what I'm feeling for her. Bound by an affection that transcended friendship, we wove a unique story into our lives, intertwining our destinies on the blank pages ahead. Time has passed since then, and our company is soon to celebrate its 5th anniversary. When I suggested making that day our wedding anniversary, as a testament to our partnership both in business and in life, Mary was so overjoyed she burst into tears. The tears streaming down her smiling face shone even more brilliant than the diamond ring I gave her in my proposal. One day, after we married, during a casual conversation, "Honey, look at this magazine. Our company is featured in such a big article. Yeah, it's all thanks to everyone's hard work. And even in the toughest times, having you by my side was what truly gave me strength. Mary, you're undoubtedly key to this company's success." "Stop it. That makes me feel so embarrassed," she said, her ears and cheeks flushing red. "You've started blushing more since we got married." "Really? Am I really blushing right now?" She ran into the bathroom to check her reflection. Seeing her whisper, I really am," and this made my heart skip a beat. Life is often fraught with hardships and injustices. I've had my share of troubles, from being fired by David to enduring his various schemes, but now I've managed to achieve great success. I believe that it's because I never lost hope, even when faced with life's adversities, and continued to strive forward. A crisis can indeed be an opportunity. Being fired back then was a chance for a new beginning, and I still believe it was a blessing in disguise. "Stay away from my husband, you uneducated loser." That's what Sophia, a former classmate, sneered at me once. She's a woman who looks down on me for being a middle school grad, boasting about her Harvard degree. What really got under my skin was not just her attitude, but the fact that she was trying to take advantage of my childhood friend, Chuck. For the sake of Chuck, with his straightforward nature, I had to expose her true colors no matter what. I steeled myself for the plan I was about to execute. Understood. I'll pass that on. After parting ways with Sophia, the bride, I waited at the wedding venue for the right moment. All the pieces and information I needed were in place. Having received help from various people to get to this day, I had to make the operation a success. As the groom's speech began, Sophia, the bride, changed color and rushed out of the venue. I followed her, determined to do what needed to be done. "My name is Kyle. I'm a middle-aged man, turning 40 this year. Raised in a typical household, I went straight to work for a company after graduating from middle school. I had wanted to attend high school, but due to our financial situation, I had to give it up. This was because my father was deceived by someone and ended up in debt when I was in 8th grade. To repay that money, both my mother and I had to work. There was a time when my father was distressed, my mother was worn out, and our home environment was at its worst, but somehow we managed to get through it. Our family didn't fall apart, perhaps due to various strokes of luck that allowed us to repay the debt within a few years. One reason was selling a historical painting found in my grandfather's storehouse, which brought in a significant sum. But another piece of luck was having a childhood friend like Chuck. Thanks to Chuck pleading with his father, Michael, I was able to work for a slightly better paying company than a typical business. Chuck was a middle school student just like me at the time, but his father owned a large corporation, which is why I was helped by them. It was sad to have to work right after middle school, but these strokes of luck allowed me to get back on my feet. Chuck has been a great help to me, and we've had a long relationship since we were kids. He's a friend I wish all the happiness in the world. To me, Chuck is not just a friend but also a junior colleague. This is because he went on to Harvard after high school, and then he chose to join the company where I work. I once asked him if he felt any discomfort about the hierarchy among peers, to which he replied, "You're a good guy, man. You wouldn't unfairly bully a junior, right?" Chuck trusted me without any doubt, saying that. When I heard those words, my heart warmed. This must be what a true friendship is all about. He continued, "Besides, I won't work at my dad's company. If I did, everyone there would go easy on me because they know me, and there'd be no tension in the work, right? Chick's father runs a pretty large enterprise, but Chuck was clear about not wanting to work there. He was doted on by his parents and everyone around him growing up. But he didn't approve of it, so he chose to work at my company to change his environment, even though it would have been easier to stay at his father's company. Because of this, Chuck faced many failures in the beginning due to being in an unfamiliar environment. However, he learned quickly, absorbing everything he was taught and growing rapidly. Now, he's even more competent than me, his senior. I admire such a friend and respect him deeply. So, I was looking forward to continuing to work hard together, but it seems like there's some trouble brewing for him. Just before lunch break, while I was doing office work at the office, Chuck approached me. With his thoughts clearly written on his face, he let out a sigh, looking quite melancholic. Since Chuck works in the same office as I do, we often chat during work hours. He's a serious guy, so it's usually about work, but today seems different. Chuck, cautious of others' eyes, started talking to me. Can we talk about something during lunch? Is that okay? What's up? Is there a problem? It's not about work, but about my personal life, you know, that matter. Hearing his hesitant words, I had a hunch. He must be troubled about his fiancée. He has a fiancée, with their wedding just around the corner, but her behavior has been somewhat concerning. She's been reckless with money and has had a wild love life. Recently, she even tried to borrow a substantial amount of money from Chuck, claiming she was broke. Chuck refused, but she's been pressing him for it ever since. For you to bring up personal matters during work, it must be serious. Well, we had a bit of an argument when we met yesterday. Chuck, usually straightforward, speaks his mind without beating around the bush. It's unlike him to be this troubled. He must be facing a significant dilemma. Resigned, I braced myself and focused on the documents on my desk. I'll rush through my work, so let's meet at our usual spot during lunch. Even if I don't finish, I can always do it later. With a resolve to solve my dear childhood friend's problem, I got down to my paperwork. Lunch break was approaching, and it was doubtful I could finish everything, but whatever remained could be deferred. Fortunately, I had just cleared the most urgent tasks. Thanks, man. I feel a bit relieved now. See you at lunch. Jer, see you soon. It must have been about half a year ago when I heard Chuck was engaged. I was surprised that he, who had never been involved with women, had found someone. Perhaps due to his playful and mischievous nature or his older-looking appearance, Chuck had never been in a relationship before. Although he seemed to have a desire to marry, no woman seemed to see him as a potential partner. Such things depend on fate. Neither I nor Chick's other friends, all decent people, ever thought he lacked appeal to women. So when he, who used to quip, "Imagine staying single for life," found himself a fiancée, I was as thrilled as if the good news were my own. I told him, "Don't ever let go of her hand," encouraging him. I was thrilled at the thought of my precious childhood friend getting married, having children, and building a happy family. But when I heard the name of Chuck's fiancée, Sophia, I became worried for him. Sophia and I were classmates in middle school, and she was not someone I'd recommend as a marriage partner. Back in middle school, Sophia was known for her extravagant spending, quickly burning through her allowance and gambling with friends. In high school, she dated multiple men, causing trouble. That's why I was concerned Chuck might end up in a bad situation. I hoped my worries were unfounded, but the situation seemed grim. Chick's expression when we talked about Sophie earlier was particularly gloomy. What came to mind was an incident that happened a few months ago. It was on a day off. 3 months after learning about Chick's engagement. I was on a train to go shopping. As I was about to go buy some hobby model kits, I noticed Sophia on the train. It was probably easy to spot her since there were fewer people around during the daytime on a weekday. It had been since middle school since we last met, but her voice and face hadn't changed much, making her easy to recognize. Dressed flamboyantly, just like back then, Sophia was adorned with numerous accessories. Sophia, pulling out her cell phone, seemed to be on a call with someone. Laughing, she was saying things like, "I got a great wallet, and I can buy so many things I like." I couldn't help but suspect she was talking about Chuck. Feeling uneasy, I listened in for more information, but the call ended too soon. Without any clear mention of a name, I was left uncertain. "What are you looking at?" Perhaps it was because I had been staring intently while lost in thought. Sophia, noticing my gaze, spoke to me. After staring at my face for a few seconds, Sophia exclaimed, "Aw, thought you were someone else, but it's just middle school grad Kyle, that poor guy who couldn't afford high school." Surprised, she started talking loudly enough for her voice to travel from one end of the train to the other, discussing things that invaded my privacy. The stares of other passengers, surprised by her outburst, focused on us. "Wow, why are you even on a train during the weekdays? Can't get a job because you're uneducated." She rapidly fired off one rude remark after another, looking at me with an expression that seemed to relish the fun. It was as if she found great joy in pointing out the flaws in people. "It's been a while, hasn't it? Anyway, don't start talking to me. I don't want to associate with the uneducated guy like you." Even though she had initiated the conversation, I was at a loss for words, and before I could respond, Sophia began preparing to get off. In a panic, I tried to ask her about Chuck, but unfortunately, the train stopped at her station before I could get an answer. After saying her piece, Sophia left through the doors, saying, "See ya," and descended onto the platform. Because of this incident, I couldn't help but think she was not a good match for Chuck. Despite reminiscing about the past, I managed to get through all my paperwork. Channeling my frustration and irritation at Sophia into my work seemed to have sped up the process. It was a subtle event that I don't know whether to rejoice about, and I couldn't dwell on it for too long. A few minutes later, it was time for my lunch break, so I hurried to the place where I had agreed to meet Chuck. I ended up at the rooftop of my company. As I opened the door leading to the rooftop, I could hear voices. "Why would you say that? I just want to invite my childhood friend to my wedding." Upon opening the door and looking in the direction of the voice, I saw Chuck, raising his voice at his cell phone. Since the word wedding came up, the person on the other end of the call was likely Sophia. It seemed they were arguing over something. Being laughed at for inviting a middle school grad to the wedding. Who would say such a thing? A person's character doesn't change based on their education. My opinion is absolute. Don't say stuff like that. Is graduating from Harvard really that big of a deal? The person on the other end of the phone must be Sophia, but I had no idea she had graduated from Harvard. I thought she seemed unintelligent because she was bad with money and had poor behavior, but it appears that was just my assumption. Intelligence didn't seem to affect one's character. Chuck continued talking to Sophia for a while, but it didn't seem to end well. He hung up with a disappointed expression. "Sorry for eavesdropping, but it doesn't seem to be going well. Is everything okay?" "Kyle, well, you know, there's a lot going on." "Is the thing you wanted to discuss about the guest list?" Chuck nodded emphatically. "Exactly. I thought if you and Sophia could talk directly, any misunderstandings might be cleared up. She won't listen, and keeps saying no because he's just a lowly middle school grad." So that's what it was. "We've known each other for a long time, and I want you to celebrate my big day." Chuck looked down and murmured, "Do I lack judgment? I thought she was a good person when we first met." Chuck, unable to bear the sight of my downtrodden childhood friend, I looked away. Maybe I shouldn't be getting married. It didn't seem this way when we started dating, but lately, Our differences in values have become more apparent. Taking a deep breath, I made a decision. My dear childhood friend was in trouble. I would do whatever I could to help. Got it, I'll look into it. About her. My childhood friend Chuck has a wide network of connections. This is largely due to his father, Michael, who is well connected in various circles. Chuck, as a child, used to accompany Michael to social parties. It seems he was entertained by the adults there, which allowed him to meet a variety of people. Thanks to my association with Chuck, who has such connections, my own network has naturally expanded, which comes in handy at times like this. I'm thinking of leveraging that network right away. I began to consider various people I could turn to, including detectives and police officers. Since it would be difficult for Chuck to suspect someone, I need to be the one to take firm action. I resolved to expose Sophia's true nature and keep her away from my childhood friend. After reaching out to various contacts, I uncovered some truths about Sophia. Though expected, the revelations were quite shocking. I was about to share this information with Chuck, but he had come down with a fever. It seems he had been under a lot of mental stress lately, which likely led to his condition worsening. When I visited him, he seemed too ill to even speak, so I couldn't bring up Sophia's matters. I didn't want to add to his stress and potentially worsen his illness. So I decided to talk to his parents instead. After explaining the situation to Michael and his wife, I had planned to eventually tell Chuck, but the wedding day arrived while he was still recuperating. Chuck seemed to have recovered just in time for the day, but I was a bit worried he was pushing himself too hard. I wanted to meet him before the wedding, but my busy work schedule prevented that. Upon arriving at the venue on the wedding day, I was fortunately guided by the staff, who said, "You must be Kyle. The venue is this way." It seems Chick's parents had arranged for my entry. Inside, there were over 500 guests. While I'm not sure about Sophia's acquaintances, it's not surprising that Chuck, with his extensive network, would have that many guests. But thinking about him being the center of attention in front of 500 people made me nervous too. I made sure to look for certain people who absolutely had to be there. After discussing with Chick's parents, we had secretly added about 10 more people to the guest list without Sophia knowing. The plan seemed to be going smoothly, and I felt relieved. As I was waiting for the ceremony to start, a staff member called me aside. Wondering what it was about, I was unexpectedly taken to the bride's dressing room. There, I was greeted by Sophia, dressed in her wedding gown. "Chuck had been saying he wanted to invite you, so I had the staff look for you, not really expecting you to come, but here you are." "Well, it's fine. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll let it slide." "Do I need your permission to celebrate my childhood friend?" "Listen, people need to follow those who are more knowledgeable and smart. That's how the world works." Sophia's condescending attitude hadn't changed since the last time we met. "You can celebrate all you want, but don't get any more involved with us. It would be embarrassing to be seen with someone like you." She continued in a mocking tone. "A couple from prestigious backgrounds and a middle school graduate just don't match, do they? Stay away from my husband. You should know your place." I had hoped that if she truly loved Chuck, she might reconsider her words and actions after my warning, but it seems that's not the case. She doesn't love Chuck. She must have approached him for her own gain. This means I can proceed with the plan without any reservations. "Understood. I'll convey that message." "What do you mean?" "I'll tell Chuck that I will stay away from him from now on." "Oh, how surprisingly understanding of you." That's why my tone might have sounded a bit brighter. Sophia looked slightly puzzled but didn't press the matter further. After a few seconds, she waved me off with an annoyed gesture, saying, "I'm busy, please leave." Her confidence is only for now. Back at the venue, I informed Michael and his wife about the conversation. They looked disappointed, But time waits for no one. As the scheduled start time arrived, the wedding ceremony began as planned. The bride and groom made their entrance, and the staff efficiently moved the ceremony along. Thanks to the skilled staff, the event proceeded smoothly without any issues. Amidst all this, Chuck, the groom, began his speech. This is my first time on such a grand occasion, so I'm quite nervous. I'm not sure if I can speak properly, but Chuck, visibly nervous, started to share how he met Sophia, the bride, and their dating stories. Soon after, a murmur started spreading through a corner of the venue. Has he been unaware of her true nature? Sophia, are you planning to use him as well? Sophia, noticing the murmur, began to panic. It seemed that only then did she realize the presence of guests who weren't supposed to be invited. There were about 10 unexpected guests. All of them were individuals who had been negatively affected by Sophia. They had either been saddled with debt or had money extorted from them while dating her. They had willingly cooperated to unveil Sophia's true colors for this occasion. Sophia, grimacing at the insults thrown her way, looked desperately at Chuck for help. But Chuck, at a loss for words, just paused his speech and observed Sophia's reaction. Then, as a final blow, a recorded voice started playing throughout the venue. It was one piece of evidence gathered by the detective. All men are just a wallet to me. Just pretend to love them and use them however you want. This voice clip echoed throughout the venue for a few minutes. Eventually, Sophia, unable to bear the atmosphere, fled the wedding hall. Afterwards, a few people left the venue to search for Sophia. Feeling responsible for devising the plan, I also went out to look for her. Sophia, found crouching on a deserted road, was being confronted by the guests. While you claimed to love me, you were only ever thinking about money. It was the same this time, wasn't it? You said friends should help each other, so pay back the debt you saddled me with. Initially, Sophia looked pale and frightened, but eventually, she defiantly retorted, "It's your responsibility for being deceived." I didn't want to exchange words with such a selfish person, but someone needed to take charge of the situation. I stepped forward. I have discussed this with everyone here beforehand. If you don't want this to become a police matter, please apologize for all the trouble you've caused so far. I continued, making sure Sophia couldn't escape. Everyone has agreed to forgive you if you promise to return all the money you swindled and pay off the debts you forced onto others. Of course, I hadn't had a chance to discuss this with Chuck, so that's a separate issue. So you had a hand in this too, a middle school graduate, no less. Who is being cornered by this middle school grad, may I ask? Sophia, biting her lip and glaring at me, reluctantly agreed to the terms after seeing the crowd around her. Though there was a chance she might renege on her promise, Sophia has kept it so far. Apparently, she didn't want to become a criminal. She has been living a modest life since then, without any support. According to the detective, she's been living in a shabby apartment, and her attempts at redemption don't seem to be going well. She appears to be living a gaunt life amidst her work-filled days. On the other hand, to save Chuck's face, we made it seem like the wedding disruption was planned. The story goes that Chuck, having realized Sophia's misdeeds, collaborated with his parents and me to hold a fake wedding. We apologized individually to those who attended the wedding unknowingly. I was worried about their reactions, but Chuck's acquaintances were all good people who laughed it off and forgave us. Of course, I also properly apologized to Chuck. It was an unavoidable situation, but I had cornered Sophia without telling him. However, Chuck forgave my apologies. It was just bad luck. If I hadn't been sick, you would have told me, right? Then there's no need to be angry. Chuck is too good for me. I realized he's an irreplaceable and precious best friend. A few years later, Chuck got married for real. His partner wasn't someone with a difficult personality like Sophia, but rather a genuinely kind-hearted woman. As a couple, they embarked on a new chapter together. At the wedding, I was entrusted with the role of giving a speech on behalf of the friends, and I carried out that responsibility with great care. I genuinely felt glad that my childhood friend was able to find true happiness. Alright, it's time for a test of courage after a long while. Go and hit on that foreign beauty over there. Don't let fear of failure hold you back. It seems like James has mistaken the foreign woman, who is looking around at the entrance, for a staff member or something. That's not passable. We're not in that kind of relationship. James, not grasping the intention behind my words, forcibly pulled my arm, saying, "What are you talking about? This is exactly the time to go for broke." And so, he dragged me over to her, but upon noticing me, she raised her hand and headed our way. "Mr. Johnson, I've been looking for you." "What? My name is Michael Johnson. I was raised in a single-parent household, not exactly wealthy. Yet, my mother worked from dawn till dusk to ensure I never lacked for anything, managing somehow to scrape together enough money for our basic needs. When I was in kindergarten, oblivious to my mother's struggles, I would insist on playing in the park all day on the rare occasions we had time off. Looking back, my mother never showed signs of fatigue and always indulged me. That's why I believe I was able to grow up without becoming twisted, despite our impoverished life. When I think about it, I can only feel gratitude towards my mother. Speaking of gratitude, there was an important friend I should be thankful for during my high school days as well. His name was Tyler. He was always there for me during tough times, never letting me give up or despair, always offering words of encouragement. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was because of Tyler that I was able to make it through high school. Unable to afford private school due to my family circumstances, I studied desperately. I repeatedly visited my teachers with questions about subjects I was poor at, like math and science, and spent countless hours in the library working through the past papers. Thanks to that effort, I managed to get into a fairly decent public high school closest to my home. There were other public schools I could have attended without studying that hard, but considering helping out at home and saving on transportation costs, a nearby school was the best option. Additionally, the high school officially prohibits part-time jobs, but it was confirmed that exceptions could be made for family circumstances upon application. Having decided to work part-time while studying to contribute financially to my household upon entering high school, I was relieved that this wish could finally be fulfilled. Upon entering high school, I was worried about making friends, but that fear was unfounded. By chance, Tyler was in the same class, sitting right in front of me. A simple greeting led to us naturally spending more time together. Tyler had a similar vibe to me, not the type to lead or unify a class, which made me feel at ease. As I was finally getting accustomed to school about a month into my enrollment, I became a target. James, who was somewhat of a leader in our class, seemed to have pegged me as a perfect victim for his teasing. "Hey, Michael, right, you always seem to be eating such pitiful meals, and your lunch is always the same too." Around the middle of lunch break, James, along with his entourage, started hassling me and Tyler. James stood at the pinnacle of the class's social pyramid, having taken charge of various things since the beginning of the school year. While everyone was still tentatively getting to know each other, James quickly emerged as a leader, gathering the more outgoing members of the class. I, fully aware of my place at the bottom, had never spoken to James's group. So, it was a surprise when he suddenly started talking to me. I was bewildered and unable to respond. James's comments drew reactions from the entire classroom. Classmates looked at me, then at my lunchbox. Their stares were painful and embarrassing. "Come on, say something. It's like I'm bullying you unilaterally here." Contrary to his words, his expression was cold, clearly not welcoming any form of retaliation. Failing to respond, he seemed bored, but then quickly found amusement again. Besides, we've just started school last month. Why is your shirt so worn out already? James and his followers scrutinized me from head to toe, then burst into laughter, clutching their stomachs. You don't have holes in your socks, do you? Mind if I check? Although they didn't go as far as to make me take off my shoes, James's comment sent chills down my spine. Without the money for a new school uniform, my family had to rely on my mother asking around until she could find a second-hand one from a graduate student. I managed to get my school uniform without spending any money, but the shirts and school-designated socks I had worn for years were worn out. Some even had holes. I was used to wearing hand-me-downs that were falling apart since elementary school, but that led to me being teased in the later grades of elementary school. Originally outgoing, such experiences gradually turned me into a shy and reserved person. Speaking of which, you two are always together. How birds of a feather flock together, I guess. Everything you own is so uncool. And don't tell me you just roll out of bed with your hair like that. Use some hair product at least and make an effort with your appearance before you show up. With that, James and his friends doubled over laughing. It's not that I had no interest in fashion or was indifferent to what I wore. But the truth is, even spending money on new items or hair products felt like a luxury. I bit my lip in frustration, but of course, I couldn't talk back. You shouldn't worry about him. He just wants to stand out. It's much more troublesome if you react strangely and entertain him. Tyler's words were the only solace I had. Even though James kept picking on me, being in the same class as Tyler for 3 years allowed me to continue going to school. Tyler never flinched no matter what James said, but I wasn't as strong as him. Yet, he always encouraged me, saying, "It's okay, they are just playing into their hands if you care. Ignoring them is the best revenge." With Tyler at school, I could endure anything. The hard times were when I was alone. One day, while working part-time at a convenience store near my home, I heard a familiar voice. Without thinking, I stopped stocking shelves and tried to hide, but the owner of the voice didn't miss me. "Hey, are you seriously working here? And you are trying to run away without greeting the customers when they come in?" Turning around, I saw James laughing with his friends looking at me. What is he here? James's hometown is 2 stations away from mine, and it's in the opposite direction from our school. As if answering my unspoken question, James approached and declared, "I have a lot of friends, so I get all sorts of information. I heard a loser breaking the school rules, working a part-time job despite the ban. What's it gonna be? Want me to snitch to the school, or will you hand over your earnings as hush money? I have permission from the school, and I can't give you any money." "Chill, man, I'm just joking. Don't look so serious." Saying that with a laugh, he walked away. Having had such a high school life, when the invitation to the 20th reunion arrived, I had no intention of attending, to be frank. I couldn't even bring myself to notify them of my absence upon seeing the invitation with the high school's name on it. So I just ignored it, eventually forgetting about the reunion invitation altogether. Then, one day, a familiar name appeared on my cell phone. I excitedly answered the call. "Tyler, it's been a while. How have you been?" "I've been good. How about you?" We had occasionally kept in touch after graduating from high school, but I started working right after graduation, and Tyler was busy with university studies and probably made new friends in a new place. Gradually, we stopped contacting each other. Hearing Tyler's voice after such a long time made me genuinely happy. After catching up, Tyler brought up the main topic. "By the way, you received the reunion invitation, right? Have you replied yet?" "Oh, yeah, it did arrive. To be honest, I wasn't really feeling up for it, so I've just left it." I was surprised that Tyler brought up the reunion, and my tone naturally fell as I hadn't been positive about the reunion myself. I assumed Tyler, like me, had no fond memories of high school and wouldn't attend. I was curious about his seemingly different attitude. "Are you going to the reunion? I thought for sure you wouldn't." "Yeah, back in high school, I couldn't wait to get out of there, but maybe my perspective changed after college and starting work." "How so?" "Well, we were still kids in high school, right? There were plenty of unpleasant things in human relations, but we were all immature. Then in college, I met all sorts of people, and as a working adult, I started enjoying meeting different people. It's been interesting lately." From Tyler's words, I could imagine he had various experiences and good encounters throughout his life. I respected him and found my feelings about the reunion starting to change. "You know," I replied to the reunion invitation because I thought it had been nice to see you after so long. "Why not join without overthinking it?" Tyler, much more sociable and cheerful than in high school, was pushing me forward just like old times. I too am looking forward to seeing him after such a long time. Perhaps now, I can even share a laugh with everyone else. "Got it. I'll find the invitation and reply tomorrow that I'll attend." We ended the call, both looking forward to our reunion. On the day of the reunion, I arrived at the venue with a mix of excitement and nervousness at the prospect of seeing old friends again. What turned my nervousness into joy was hearing my best friend's voice. "Michael, it's been so long. The last time we met was probably at the graduation ceremony." We reveled in our reunion after so many years, our conversation blossoming. While there were groups happily reuniting and expanding all around the venue, our high school life hadn't involved wide social circles, so there weren't many approaching us. Should we try reaching out to our classmates? You never know, it might lead to some great connections. But then again, Michael, you might not be in need of that kind of thing. Tyler had been focused on his career and, as he had mentioned over the phone, wasn't married nor in a romantic relationship. Perhaps he was looking forward to this aspect of the reunion as well. While we were enjoying our conversation, someone called out to us from behind. "Is that Michael and Tyler? Long time no see." It was James. I felt a slight resurgence of the unpleasant feelings from high school, but not as much as I'd expected. This might have been due to James's softer expression and tone. Maybe, as Tyler said, we had all grown up. James didn't carry an aggressive aura, and it seemed we might be able to get along now. I replied with a bit of nervousness. "James, long time no see. Are you still living around here?" James, eager as if he had been waiting for me to ask, began to share his story with a happy look. "Nah, I'm in New York now. Work keeps me busy, so I hardly get back here, but I took the day off just to make it today." His conversation then shifted towards his job. He talked about working for a major corporation listed on the prime market, how he was making more money than he could spend, and how he was popular at mixers. His boasting seemed endless. As I was getting tired of listening, James turned the conversation to me. "So, Michael, which company are you with? I doubt you'd know it even if I told you." So it's not a listed company. You're wearing a decent suit, so I thought you landed a good job. Reminds me, you were always slacking off in high school, busy with part-time jobs and all." James scanned me from head to toe, then continued in a condescending tone. "You're not married yet, right? You know from your own experience, kids from poor families struggle a lot. You definitely shouldn't make the mistake of having kids." James looked down on me with the same expression from high school, laughing mockingly. I felt a surge of discomfort, finding the conversation unbearable. I didn't respond to his words, perhaps finding pleasure in my silence. He continued. "All right, it's time for a test of courage. Go and hit on that foreign beauty over there. Don't let the fear of failure hold you back." It seems James mistook the foreign woman at the entrance, who was looking around, for staff or something. At his ignorant remarks, I couldn't help but be dumbfounded. "That's not happening. We're not in that kind of relationship." James, failing to grasp my intent, forcibly pulled my arm, saying, "What are you talking about? You studied hard even with just a high school education. You should be able to communicate with her. You don't have a girlfriend anyway, right? This is the time to go for broke." As James dragged me towards her, the woman noticed me and raised her hand, heading our way. "Mr. Johnson, I've been looking for you." Surprised by her reaction, James asked with an unexpected look, "What's this, Michael? You know her, what's the connection here?" She's Isabella, my secretary at the company." His eyes widened in clear surprise at my words. "Your company? What do you mean? Are you Mr. Johnson, the president?" His reaction was so unexpected that I couldn't help but burst out laughing. In this situation, who else could it be? Actually, I started my own business after working for a while post-graduation. Of course, it's not a major corporation like yours, but I'm considering going public. James's response sounded almost like sour grapes. Starting a business is common these days, right? But most of them fail, don't they? Yay, that's true. But I'm working hard to ensure that doesn't happen. Currently, we have over 100 employees, and each of them has a family, so I'm determined to make it a success. He listened to my words with clenched teeth, then turned to Isabella. "You should quit such an unstable company. I'd like to get to know you, so how about going out for dinner with me sometime?" Isabella didn't seem to understand his clumsy attempt at Spanish, so I translated for her. James was taken aback by my fluent Spanish, but Isabella, after hearing my words, smiled gently and spoke to James in English like she was admonishing a child. "Thank you for your invitation, I appreciate it, but I don't find men who just dress up with accessories and don't try to improve themselves attractive." James seemed overwhelmed by her flawless English. She then addressed him with stern words. "You said some terrible things to Mr. Johnson. You might have thought I couldn't understand complicated English, but frankly, it was very unpleasant. I wouldn't dine with someone like you, and if I have free time, I'd rather devote it to Mr. Johnson." After saying that, Isabella smiled at me and said, "I'll be waiting in the car," before leaving the venue. James, who had been silent for a while, clenched his fists and looked down. He then muttered something in a low voice. Unable to hear clearly, I just faced James silently. His expression was unreadable. I managed to catch his next words, though his voice was weak and trembling. "Why is it always you?" At first, I thought I had misheard. I had been looked down upon, but never envied my life. Even though my business is finally on track, this was my third attempt at entrepreneurship. I had started businesses to address issues I identified but had to close them due to poor sales or lack of capability. Despite declaring this company as my last attempt, its survival was initially doubtful. Despite everything, I've managed to get by so far thanks to the flow of time and some good encounters. Even though I've been encouraged to just give up, I've never been envied. Moreover, James had scorned me to no end during high school. So, it was unthinkable for him to say such things to me. Before I knew it, Tyler was standing beside me. He looked at James with a puzzled expression. What did he say? I couldn't quite catch it. James slowly lifted his face. His expression was full of anger, and I felt an intense hatred. Why is it always you who gets the good time? James's voice was on the verge of tears as he confronted me. Confused, I responded sharply without thinking. Good time. Sorry, but you treated me horribly. Remember, I won't let you forget that. Do you have any idea how miserable you made me feel? For the first time, I was able to express my grievances to James, something I couldn't do back then. Yet, my heart didn't feel lighter. Somehow, James looked more pained than I did. I was bullied like that in middle school. I was a coward, so, to avoid becoming a target again, I desperately looked for someone weaker than me, and that was you. There's so much I want to say in response, but I decided to stay silent and listen to his words until the end. I attacked to show others I was superior and to reassure myself. I actually wanted to be friends with someone like you. But you never got discouraged by my attacks and even made a best friend, enjoying your school life. It made me feel frustrated. And even though I wanted to apologize and be friends, my pride got in the way. James's unexpected confession left me unsure how to react. I had no idea how much he had suffered in middle school. Even now, I find it hard to believe that he wanted to be friends with me back then. In contrast to my loss for words, Tyler spoke up in a stern voice. Just because you wanted to be friends doesn't give you the right to attack Michael, and nothing you say now can heal the wounds Michael suffered back then. James was left speechless by Tyler's words, unable to utter a single sound as he hung his head in silence. Tyler pressed on, further confronting James. And yet, you talk about the past like that, which is just cowardly. I was right there seeing how much Michael was hurt, and I have no interest in hearing the excuses of a man who never apologized. At Tyler's words, James sharply looked up. I wanted to apologize today, but seeing you in a nice suit and seemingly more successful than me, jealousy got the better of me, James said, looking down again. Hearing this, I shared my own thoughts. I've always envied you, James, for your leadership and influence. I often thought how fun school life would have been if I could have been friends with someone like you. I wanted to be friends, but I thought someone like me could never be, especially since you were always picking on me. If we had understood each other's feelings, we probably could have been good friends. Though I intended to keep the conversation light, I ended up tearing up. I could hear James sniffling too. We can go back to the past, even if we wish to. Both Tyler and I suffered a lot during our high school days, and James, carrying the baggage from his middle school experiences, repeated his mistakes in high school. A heavy silence enveloped us, broken by Tyler. A lot of time has passed since then. We've all grown up. Maybe we can get along now. Though I wouldn't be too happy to see you two becoming close. Prompted by Tyler's words, James and I exchanged glances. Then, James turned to both Tyler and me and offered a deep apology. Michael, Tyler, I'm truly sorry. I made a terrible mistake. If you can forgive me, I'd like to be friends, despite everything. Tyler and I exchanged glances, then nodded together. We shook James's hand firmly, accepting his apology. The reunion became a turning point, and the distance between James and us significantly closed. After the reunion, the three of us regularly met to catch up and enjoy a drink together. One day, I brought up a concern I had. I've got something I've been worried about. Don't be so formal, just spit it out. Both James and Tyler listened casually as they sipped their drinks. Gathering my courage, I blurted out to both of them, my face turning red. There's someone I'm interested in. It's Isabella, the secretary you both met, but I've never really been in a serious relationship before, so I don't know what to say. At my serious inquiry, Tyler burst into laughter. James looked at me with an incredulous expression. Come on, I'm seriously worried here, but I guess someone like me doesn't stand a chance, right? What are you talking about? I'm not exactly a ladies' man either, but even I can tell. Deflated by Tyler's words, I slumped my shoulders. Seeing me like this, James spoke up, seemingly amused. You're misunderstanding something. Even from that brief moment at the reunion, it was clear that Isabella has feelings for you. James and Tyler then began to grill me, asking detailed questions about my interactions with Isabella. Sure, Isabella and I often went out for meals, and there was a fair amount of physical touch between us. I had thought it was just part of our working relationship and cultural differences. But according to them, I might have been mistaken. You're hopeless. I'll teach you step by step, so make sure you properly ask her out on a date next time, James said. Thanks, I'm counting on you, bro. I realized I had the best friends anyone could ask for. As we shared drinks, I felt truly grateful from the bottom of my heart. Years have passed since then. The three of us met up again, stylishly dressed in suits just like we were at the reunion. "You look tense. You should be proud at a time like this," James remarked. "Exactly. You've never looked better," Tyler added. As I was the only one feeling stiff, the three of us chatted and laughed until a staff member from the venue approached us. "I'll be going then. Please take care of things today." Parting from the two, I made my way to the dressing room. Today is my wedding with Isabella. Taking James's advice into account, I confessed to Isabella. Our relationship smoothly progressed from there, and I was even successful in my proposal. These happy days would never have come without James and Tyler's support. From now on, I'll build a new family and work even harder in my job. There might be times when I hit a wall, but that's okay, because I have best friends who will support me whenever I'm in trouble. Being poorly educated and on welfare really puts you at the bottom of society, doesn't it? The contemptuous look in my ex-wife Emily's eyes as she said those words to me. The young man laughing beside her must be her affair partner. At that moment, I lost all my affection for her. "Who are you confusing me with?" When I said that coldly, Emily replied with a puzzled huh. Ignoring that, I slipped past the two of them and left. Wait a minute. Her call to stop me didn't reach my heart. All I felt was annoyance. My name is Michael, and I'm 42 years old. Currently, I'm unemployed due to certain circumstances, and I've been single since my divorce 3 years ago. Some might think my situation looks lonely, but I don't feel that way at all. I don't regret getting divorced, and thanks to some unique family circumstances, I'm used to living alone, so I don't feel like my current situation is anything special. No matter the circumstances, as long as you find value in your own life, that's all that matters. Though I'm unemployed, I'm not cooped up at home, and I don't believe that work is just about earning a salary. These days, most people work for money, but the most important aspect of working should be personal growth through the experience. No matter how high the salary, if there's no growth in the job, your spirit remains impoverished. The most important things in this world are definitely not money. Some might call it an idealistic view, but this is something I'll never waver on. Right now, I'm focusing on personal growth for volunteer work, leading a fulfilling life with meaningful connections, even as a single man. Unfortunately, I couldn't truly connect with my wife, who was supposed to be my life partner. Her name was Emily. We met at work, where I was a car salesman, and she, 7 years my junior, worked as an office clerk. We dated for a year after meeting at the dealership and then got married, but the breakdown came quickly. Right after we got married, I discovered Emily was having an affair. Worse still, it was with my boss at the time, the sales manager James. I had been indebted to him since my early days at the company and had deep trust in him as a superior. So when I found out, I was devastated to the point of feeling torn apart. Soon after, I fell from the mental shock and couldn't continue working. Having lost my wife, job, and a trusted superior, I fell into a deep mistrust of people. The emotional scars were deep, and I often panicked in public, requiring frequent hospital visits for a while. It took about 3 years on welfare before I could lead a normal life again. During that time, something amazing happened to me, but I'll save that story for another time. Despite the terrible betrayal I faced, I still don't hate Emily. The same goes for James. It's painful, but I married her because I loved her, and even after the betrayal, I believe it has led to me becoming stronger. Maybe it was better to part ways after hurting each other than to stay together. To Emily, it might have just been youthful indiscretion. She was nonchalant even when our divorce over the affair came to light. Perhaps she's always been the type to take marriage and divorce lightly. Now, I even think that her free-spirited nature was one of her charms. The one consolation was that she did marry James and they had a child together. Unlike me, who grew up as an orphan, James is well-educated and capable, a reliable person. Compared to me, anyone would want to marry him. When the affair came to light, James sincerely apologized to me. He said he was prepared to be hated for life and offered any amount of alimony, asking me to claim it. James truly loved Emily. Suppressing my pain, I told him that I didn't care about the alimony, but when the child was born, to please ensure their happiness. I'll never forget the complex expression on his face at that time, a mix of joy, anger, sorrow, and pleasure. After such a tragedy, I somehow managed to recover and started volunteering. Specifically, I help run a children's cafeteria. We provide free meals to children who can get proper meals due to their families' financial situations. As a child, I was separated from my parents and shuffled between relatives' homes, but the hardest part was not being able to eat my fill during my growth years. Being a boarder made me overly cautious, so I couldn't ask for seconds. Initially, I got involved with the children's cafeteria wanting to help my younger self, but now I see it in a broader perspective. Saving these children is like creating the future of humanity. Thanks to our volunteers' sincere efforts, many restaurants have joined a cause, even high-end ones that are usually inaccessible to most people, lending us their spaces. During one such occasion, I unexpectedly ran into Emily at a high-end Italian restaurant. It was after a meeting at the restaurant. And there she was, walking in with an unfamiliar man, bumping into me unexpectedly. The man with Emily was young and in flashy clothes, leaving me at a loss for words. Without any sign of remorse, Emily cheerfully greeted me, "Oh, long time no see. Why are you in such an upscale place? I heard you quit your job, got sick, and ended up on welfare," she asked. I could smell alcohol on Emily. Was she drinking in the middle of the day? As I stood there stunned and silent, the young man chimed in, "There are people who come to high-end places even on welfare, Emily." Indeed, recent news have been rife with issues of welfare fraud, with reports of some people living it up without working. Worried about being misunderstood, I replied, "I'm not on it anymore," but Emily laughed in a high-pitched tone. Then, with an air of superiority, she said, "This guy has no parents and didn't even go to high school," adding, "Poorly educated and being on welfare really puts you at the bottom of society, doesn't it?" The young man's expression stiffened for a moment, but he quickly laughed along, saying, "That's right, Emily." I was so dumbfounded by the absurdity that I forgot to be angry. Despite having a person like James, she was flirting with this young man. What was she thinking? And isn't her child still young? However, I had no interest in delving into Emily's family situation there. "Who are you confusing me with?" I asked Emily back. It was because the employees were watching us. I didn't want the people from this restaurant, who would be participating in the children's cafeteria, to think I was associated with Emily, so I decided to act as if she was a complete stranger. Then Emily made a face like, "What? I don't know who you are, but perhaps you've mistaken me for someone else." I brushed past the two of them, saying just that. "Hey, are you ignoring me?" Emily shouted after me. "Let it go, Emily, forget about that guy," the young man tried to soothe her. To me, all of it was just unwanted noise. Any affection I might have had for Emily had completely vanished from my heart. I have few memories of my parents, but one phrase my mother often said sticks in my mind. It was a bleak statement devoid of dreams or hope. Happiness is nothing but an illusion. I only have a vague memory of my father. I'm not even sure if he was my real father. My relatives didn't tell me much, but I learned that my mother used to work in a nightclub and married a man she met there. However, the marriage didn't work out, and my father left home. For a while, it was just my mother and me, but I can say I felt happy. Probably because my mother herself wasn't happy. Then one night, she went out to work and never came back. The truth was that she had run off with another man, but my relatives told me she was hospitalized for an illness. Since they wouldn't tell me the hospital's name, I went around the city asking for my mother by name at various hospitals. Of course, I never found her, and I started to think that maybe my mother was no longer in this world. Eventually, I had to give up and cut off my feelings for my mother as a way to cope. I'm grateful to the uncle and aunt who took care of me. Since they didn't have children of their own, they treated me with great care and kindness. But feeling too self-conscious, I left their home after graduating from middle school. They tried to stop me from leaving, worried about me, but I ended up leaving and started working in newspaper delivery, living on the job. Of course, being a minor, I needed a guardian's permission to work, so legally, I still relied on my uncle and aunt, but I always wanted to grow up and live on my own. As a child, I didn't want to be taken care of by adults, but for other children, I hope they can receive adult care. I want to spread this children's cafeteria project worldwide. After reuniting with Emily, I was worried about their child. It's hard to imagine Emily providing proper parenting. Despite feeling it might be meddlesome, I decided to contact James. I worried he might not answer my call, but he spoke to me with the same voice as before. I sensed a bit of tiredness in his voice, probably busy with parenting and work. I broached the subject, asking, "How old is your child now?" James hesitated for a moment, then said, 4 years old, but we're not together anymore. I was at a loss for words. But he bravely said, "Emily and I are divorced. It's been a year already," with a laugh. According to him, Emily's parents are raising the child. Apparently, Emily wasn't suited for parenting and started working soon after giving birth, leaving the child's care to her parents. She never took care of the child, not even visiting on her days off. Despite James's love for their child and his desire to live together as a family, Emily refused. Eventually, she asked for a divorce, and James became just a source of child support. It was heartbreaking that James still loved Emily, despite everything. I hung up the phone with mixed feelings. Then, suddenly, I received a call from Emily, almost dropping the phone in surprise. I hadn't expected her to keep my number. Hesitantly answering, I could hear the noisy background on her end. Got through. Connected with my ex-husband. Still clinging to my number, right? Emily said upon hearing my voice. I almost retorted that it was mutual, but for Emily, keeping my number might have been just another tool she could use someday. Emily, sounding drunk, started talking. I heard from that Italian restaurant manager we met the other day that you're doing volunteer work. I replied, "That's right. And you're funding the organization with a significant amount, aren't you?" The manager praised you as a remarkable person. Despite being on welfare before, where did you get such money? Laughter echoed in the background. Or are you using the welfare money for volunteer work to feel superior? What's the fun in a pathetic person saving other pathetic people? I wanted to say that she was the one creating those pathetic people. But I restrained my rising anger. Anger solves nothing. Due to circumstances, I inherited a substantial estate. I wanted to use it for society. So I started the cafeteria for children who can't have homemade meals. Emily, you should bring your child sometime. With that, I ended a call. The news of my father's inheritance came to me last year. Having no parents, I never expected any inheritance. But it turned out my father, whom I barely remembered, did exist and was quite wealthy. I was told I would inherit about $20 million, including life insurance. Even hearing such a large sum, it doesn't quite register for me, just an ordinary person. Naturally, since I barely grasped the concept of having a father. But if it was true, I had to accept it. With that money, I could save many children. That thought led me to volunteer. Though my distrust in people had diminished, I didn't have the courage to marry again, so I wouldn't have children of my own. That's why I thought I could treat all children equally. And that includes Emily's child. A few days after the phone call, Emily brought her child to the children's cafeteria event at the Italian restaurant. The boy, not yet in elementary school, had features resembling Emily's, making for a handsome face. He had Emily's looks, but his demeanor reminded me of James. It might be odd to say, but thanks to not being raised by Emily, he was a well-mannered child who knew how to greet properly. Emily, knowing about my wealth, seemed to have a change of heart. "I'm sorry for what I said last time. I've actually been thinking about you all this time." I doubted her words, but I honestly admitted that I still had feelings for Emily after we parted. I can't lie about my feelings. "So, can we start over?" she said, her eyes shining. Wrinkles had formed at the corners of her eyes, now past 35. "But seeing you with that young person, I just didn't care anymore. The lady I loved was the one married to James." Emily then raised her voice. "You're just pretending to be strong. You're lonely." Everyone in the restaurant turned to look at us. Apologizing to the startled diners, I took her outside. "You're a mother. How can you act like this in front of your child?" I reproached her without thinking. But Emily retorted nonchalantly. "You can't stand women like your mother, right? You pretend to be all about justice, but you're just a petty person holding on to the past." As much as I was angered by her words, I had to admit she might be right. Perhaps I saw my mother in Emily. I still remember how it felt to be abandoned by my mother. It was sad, painful, and frustrating. I had always wanted to marry someone I loved and build a warm family. But the person I fell for was Emily, who resembled my mother. "I truly loved you, but I've woken up. There will never be an us again. However, I do want your child to keep coming to the children's cafeteria." Then, she snorted disdainfully with a humph and returned to the restaurant. My mother's words, "Happiness is an illusion," came back vividly, but I quickly dismissed them. Happiness isn't an illusion. If you find value in life, you can feel happiness as tangible as anything. I want to convey that to children from difficult family situations for meals. That was the last time I saw Emily. She suddenly disappeared. It seems she ran away with that young man. It turns out he was working in a bar, accused of stealing from the bar and fleeing. As someone associated with Emily, I was questioned but had nothing to share. Only the man was caught, but Emily's whereabouts remained unknown for months. According to the man, they had a falling out while fleeing with the stolen money, and Emily got out of the car in the mountains. Based on that testimony, a search was conducted, and Emily was found at the bottom of a ravine, her body drastically altered. It's presumed that she likely slipped and fell off a cliff. While Emily's fate saddened me, I was more concerned about the child she left behind. He would end up parentless, like me. However, contrary to my worries, James took custody of the child. When I told him about the children's cafeteria, he brought his child along. It was a chance to catch up with James after a long time. Though we had worked together, we never discussed our personal lives. James shared that he had a tough childhood due to his parents' divorce. Yet, he felt ashamed for how things turned out, considering himself a failed father. "There's no way that's true. I think you are a great father. I can tell just by looking at your son's face." He had the look of someone who loves his dad very much. When I said that, James gave a bashful smile. He then said he's dedicating his life to his son from now on. People who find value in their lives are strong. I'm sure he'll do a splendid job raising his son. And I can't help but hope that his son will one day build a happy family of his own. The children's cafeteria's reputation spread rapidly nationwide. With people starting to make donations, I established a foundation. My call to action reached many, and the number of volunteers continued to grow. In 5, 10, 20 years, the children who grew up with the cafeteria will become adults. Watching them grow was the greatest happiness I could ask for. I can only be grateful to my parents for bringing me into this world to find this happiness. But life is finite. Or rather, it's because life is finite that it has value. Now, I sincerely hope that this work will be continued by kind-hearted people even after I'm gone.